Eli here, and today we're going to start exploring one of my passion projects, bringing Dota 2 characters to Path of Exile. So what are my goals with this? Number one, top priority is being as thematically accurate as I can, looking at the skills that Windranger has and matching them up as close as I can to things that can be done in Path of Exile. Number two, make the character fun or interesting to play. And then number three, work on how viable she is and push whatever kind of content that she can up to the point where she just starts to die. So let's take a look at the skills. In Dota 2, her first skill is Shackleshot. Essentially what this is, it's a bola, it's a projectile that runs out, and if it hits an enemy, then it can latch to a tree or latch to another unit, and then if it hits something directly behind them, it will stun them for a period of time. Nothing really exists in Path of Exile that matches this kind of behavior. So instead, what I did was I went out and picked up Maloney's mechanism so that we can fire ensnaring arrow every time we fire a bow skill. So it's kind of similar. It's as close as I could figure out to do, where they're going to take a little bit more damage, which is useful for the build, and they are getting slowed by a lot. And I figured if I could slow them enough, then maybe it'll kind of act like being stunned. Sort of. We almost got there. Her second skill, Powershot, has a little more leeway to it, a little more wiggle room, if you will. What I did was I looked at Snipe from the Asylum helmet, where I figured, okay, if we can charge up this skill, whatever this skill is that's in the helmet, enough, then maybe we can launch that out as kind of our wave clear skill, which is a lot of what it's used for in Dota 2, so it kind of matches up thematically and in terms of its actual purpose. And it can also do a little bit of damage to single targets as well. It's not too bad. So for this, I went with Galvanic Arrow, and because we are Deadeye in this build, we have innate chain and innate additional projectiles, so I figured this kind of works out well. We can charge up to 4 to 6 stacks and release it on enemies like we see here, and it ends up working fairly well. We also throw in Awakened Fork on this so that we have additional forks going on along with our projectiles and our chaining, so while it might not delete the entire screen and then 2 screens over, it usually does a pretty good job at clearing up a pack. Her next ability is Windrun. In Dota 2, this makes you faster and gives you 100% evasion against attacks. And while there isn't a specific skill that does this in Path of Exile, I've kind of built her around dodge and having evasion and a few additional keystones like arrow dancing to help make her a little more evasive than normal. We also use Anomalous Dash with Enhance so that we can move around the screen really far. I figured it's kind of an activatable skill, which is what I was more going for with this character as opposed to just passive evasion. And so we can use Dash to sort of move through things, which is kind of similar thematically and sort of serves the same purpose in a practical sense. And last but not least, her ultimate is Focus Fire. Essentially, it places a buff on you and a debuff on the target, and as long as you are near enough to that target, you will continuously fire arrows into them for the duration. And this skill is primarily why I picked Deadeye, so that we can have the far shot keystone and our barrage does not spread. So that's what we're doing here with barrage. Barrage was the only realistic way I could see to fire tons and tons of arrows in a more or less straight line so that, we could focus fire on one individual target and hopefully do a lot of damage to that one single target. And it does kind of work out pretty well. There's not something that I could do that will passively attack in any meaningful way in Path of Exile, so this one was a little bit tricky, but I think with Barrage, we kind of hit as close as we could to the nail on the head. On the back end, I just want to touch on her path building, where she is now, where I think I would upgrade her if I were to continue playing the character. So as you can see, we have kind of a standard Raider elemental damage bow character setup here. We come up here to get some crit. We convert some of these into bow nodes with our Lionized Fall. And we have about 2 million DPS right now on just a normal monster. If we up this to Shaper or Cirrus, it's 1.1. Nothing really to write home about. This is using Gathering Winds. Right now we are not using boots that have Tailwind on them. That would probably be the first thing that I would do, put Tailwind on the boots and make sure all of the resistances still work out. I think they should pretty easily with my gear, at least right now. And what this allows us to do is we can take out Gathering Winds and grab Focal Point. The Gathering Winds DPS, the 12.3, is highly dependent. Right now we have it set at, where are we, 5 stages of Gale Force. If we wanted to max that out completely, then we have a 20%, but that is completely dependent on you being able to get Gale Winds up to 10 stacks all the time, as opposed to Focal Point, which is going to give us just straight DPS all the time on the target that we really want. The next thing I'd probably do is search out a large cluster jewel that has Prismatic Heart and Sadist, since we're critting a lot and we should be able to keep up Sadist's bonuses a lot of the time. That gives us also 2 extra jewel sockets. As you might be able to see here, we're running up to level 89, so we're getting a little bit strapped for points. I would probably take out Fury Bolt's cluster here that I've picked up. Not a whole lot of overall DPS at 7%. And since we are now level 89 in this hypothetical, we have a little more hit points, and I might take out these 2 nodes as well to bring us down to a requirement of 87. And from there, just a quick glance over the items that I currently have on this build. The bow is far and away the most expensive piece. I believe this cost me about 14 exalts. And moving from left to right, I guess, we have life gain on hit from our ring. I felt like that was pretty important for our barrage, a little bit of help for our sustain. Second most expensive piece here was an additional curse and crit chance. This lets us use this ring with elemental weakness on hit, and then we can throw on Sniper's Mark, which has 75% increased effectiveness if we have that talent point. And then we can go with Maloney's Mechanism, so we can fire off our ensnaring arrow. That's pretty important. We have to use a Salem helmet, unfortunately. Snipe kind of sucks, which is kind of the thing dragging this build down pretty hard, but the theme is very important, and so we use it. Picked up one with Barrage fires an extra projectile. That was pretty cheap because people aren't really using Asylum with actual attack skills, much less Barrage, so it's not a very valuable enchant, but people have it for sale anyway. And then our amulet and our boots and our gloves and our belt. These are just stat and resist fixings with as much attack damage as we can get on them, weapon elemental damage for our belt here, as you can see, and if we can get them on our rings, which I don't have any, but I do have some on the amulet here. And right now we have ambidexterity on this amulet. That's what it came with. I would instead probably choose to have Divine Judgment on here for just 50% increased elemental damage, and if we go up here, we can see that that is 7% more damage, so roughly another 100,000 DPS for coming up close to 1.5 million. And again, that is currently on Shaper, so if we're looking at normal bosses, then it's closer to 1.6 on our Barrage, which gives us closer to about 1.8 with Divine Judgment. Now, one piece of this character which I was kind of bummed about that I couldn't really do anything for was I didn't have the cosmetics that I really wanted for her. In no way, shape, or form am I advising you to go buy any sets from Grinding Gear. I just want to talk about a little bit briefly about what I would have liked for the cosmetics and the aesthetic appeal within Path of Exile to try to match Windranger as much as possible. I think it would have been the Darkwood set for the most part, and then replace the boots and gloves with these white ones because her hands and feet are white in the game because I have what's called the Arcana. It's just a special kind of cosmetic in Dota. So I think between the two of those, it probably would have looked pretty cool. Again, I'm not advising you to go out and buy these because I wouldn't, because totally that would cost $58, which is completely insane. But I would have liked it if I had infinite money because I think it would look cool. And on the subject of would I or wouldn't I, in terms of actually playing this character and developing it further, I don't exactly advise you to go out and build this character. If you have a different idea for where it could go, maybe give that a shot or send that to me if you have a POB that you want to mock up and say, hey, what about this version of your Windranger? I'm totally into that. I'm making these just purely for fun, not trying to make any great achievements or strides necessarily in the game. I'm just trying to match up themes and see if we can have a good time doing it. So that all said, I had a lot of fun playing the character. It's a very active playstyle, and she's a little bit weak too, so she really needs to dodge around a lot, and she's not super strong, so you have to play a little more tactically than just obliterating the screen, which is what I'm used to. And maybe in the future I'll come back to her and maybe recreate her a little bit, or someone will send me over some thoughts on a complete redesign of how we can go a little bit further and make her a little bit better while also fitting the theme. That would be cool. So there you go, one of my passion projects. I'm going to keep working on other characters, bring some more Dota characters into the fold, and see what we can do with them. If you have any thoughts on this character, how it could be better, or some POB markups, let me know in the comments, shoot me a message, however you want to do it. And until next time, this is Eli, signing off.